to read the cases, after which we will bring in the coaches and judges for the presentation. You may begin.
the room. As soon as the live case team has entered and is settled, you'll have a short presentation and question-answer period. If you need to use the washroom, flag someone down and please be patient. We're going to escort you. A note to participants, we'll be delivering you now your just the presentation slides. They're the same slides that the organization will be walking you through. We're going to be distributing them to the tables. I have people coming for washrooms. Rest assured, I'm rallying.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. So by now, you have read the background material for the 2017 live case by WeWork. Can everybody please stop discussing? We're about to begin the presentation. Thank you. So we are thrilled to welcome Dave McLaughlin, one of the general managers of WeWork, who is here with us from Boston. Dave is responsible for a division of WeWork that covers 70 million people throughout Canada and Eastern USA. They will now take you through the live presentation, which will then be followed by a Q&A, which will be narrated by our case briefer, Gwyneth. So we will be randomly drawing school names out of our Concordia Cup. You will each ask one question until we run out of time. We have until noon. So I ask that when your school name is drawn, please raise your hand so that we can locate you and bring a mic to have you ask your question. So thank you very much, and welcome, Dave.
Okay. Good morning. Who said nice shirt? Beautiful. En français. That's all the French I have. Vita passion. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm very excited, and my commitment to the organizers is that whatever happens today, we're going to have fun. So I would like to just first affirm that you're all in that commitment with me. Yes? All right. Beautiful. It's very important, actually. I'm going to explain why it's important to your success in this, and you'll understand that. So just hold on to that idea. We're going to have a lot of fun here. It's really important. Sincere thanks to all the organizers of the competition for welcoming us and inviting us to be part of this. It's such a great format. It's such a privilege to be here with all of you, and really it's such a privilege to be able to share some of the details of what we're doing at WeWork and what we've achieved and what we see looking forward. And it's a great privilege to be able to have the benefit of your ideas and your insights and perspective and creativity, thinking about kind of some of what the future will hold. I'm going to make a very quick introduction for two of my colleagues who are here, and so I see one, I don't see the other, but Lex Miller, who's here, oversees a portfolio that includes Boston and Montreal, so sort of the northeast subset of the region that I'm responsible for, and then Marta Rocamora-Gonzalez, I don't know where Marta is, but Marta is our leader here in Montreal. So as we go on through the day, if you see either of them, make sure you introduce yourselves, and I'm sure they'll be interested to hear your thoughts. I want to make a quick disclaimer, which is just to say the scale of velocity and growth that WeWork is experiencing right now is pretty extraordinary. We are still a privately held company, and so I have to be mindful of the guardrails of what I can and cannot share. And so if in the course of the presentation today you ask me a question that I may not be able to answer, I'll let you know that. And I'll do my best to give you a directional answer so we can say, well, that's not something I can share, but for the purposes of the competition, think about it this way, something like that. I also want to note that in the background information, there's one data point that was incorrect. It said that we're going to do $1 billion in revenue in 2017, and the correct data point is that we will hit $1 billion in annual run rate in 2017. So just a factual point of correction. The format is I'm going to talk for about 35 or 40 minutes, hopefully tell you a story that you find engaging, and then you're going to have 40 minutes or so to ask questions, and Valerie talked about how we're going to do that. So again, let's have some fun. Where is my little, here we go. We're going to frame a business problem this way. WeWork is a mission-driven company, and you're going to hear a lot about this mission and culture and values. That is not something that we put on a slide for the sake of putting on a slide. It is our raison d'etre. And so the question for us is, or the question for us here in the room today is, how should we extend our product line given the strengths and competitive advantages that we have based on where we are today, given the competitive landscape, given, you know, all the other things that we talk about, and especially given our raison d'etre, our mission, our culture, our values, why we're in this, okay? We'll talk more and define that more both through the presentation and also in your questions, I'm sure. But that's the basic business challenge for you today. Let's start then with the mission, which is very, very simple. We want to create a world where people work to make a life and not just a living. A world where people work to make a life and not just a living. Let me ask you for a show of hands, how many people here have imagined starting and building something? A company, a nonprofit? Great. And how many of you have actually either done that or tried to do that? Great. It's hard. It's very hard. I've done it. I've done it a couple of times. And I'll tell you a quick personal story just to illustrate this. My last company was a software company. I live in Boston, and I had a dozen employees. I had an office space in downtown Crossing in Boston that was $19 a square foot. That's about 50% below market at the time, so quite cheap. You know, at the end of the day, I sold the company, and I was still in the lease. I had to figure out how to get out of the lease. I had to, you know, go through that whole process. But really, the point of the story is I got introduced to WeWork and was considering coming to join the team at WeWork, and I wanted to test the cost proposition. And I thought, this might be compelling for companies that don't have the deal I had, 50% below market. So I took a spreadsheet, I took my $19 a square foot rent, and then I added a row for every other expenditure that I had that was related to the space. So the obvious things like my utilities and my furniture, but also the non-obvious things like my water delivery and my cleaning costs and things like that. And what I found was really surprising but really simple. My rent at 50% below the market price was more expensive on a month-to-month basis than going to WeWork in Boston and paying $600 per person per month. Because when I managed to get an apples-to-apples comparison of all my out-of-pocket expenditures that were related to space, and I compared that to this nice, easy, single price at WeWork, that's the way it stacked up. So for somebody who wants to start something and build something and grow something in an environment that gets more and more competitive every day, to basically lower the barrier to entry, to invite people to come and take space, to plug seamlessly into an incredibly robust community of like-minded folks with similar values who really look to collaborate and look to help each other grow faster. To do that where you come on a month-to-month commitment rather than a multi-year lease commitment that you're locked into. To take away all the extra friction and aggravation of having to have extra office personnel and having to set up, you know, binding utilities contracts and all that kind of stuff, and let you focus on making a life and not just a living. That's the mission for WeWork, and it's very important to today's conversation. In terms of size and scale, so WeWork, this is what we do. We take buildings, we convert them into our space configuration, which is a mixture of open space work areas and private office work areas. The private office work areas range from a single desk to, in some cases, 150 desks or more. And then we make that available to people on a month-to-month basis, so it's very low friction, it's very easy for them to plug into, and we activate this incredible community. A data point that we like to share, we surveyed our members. We don't refer to our customers as tenants because, again, this is about a community, so we refer to them as members. We surveyed them and said, simple question, have you collaborated with another WeWork member, and have you done business with another WeWork member? And the answer was 70%, 70, had collaborated with another WeWork member, and 50%, 50, had actually done business with another WeWork member. I thought that was extraordinary. The fact that you get people together and you create an environment where I can source vendors faster, I can find partners faster, I can grow my business faster, I can find and retain key talent more effectively, all that happens within this WeWork environment. So if you think of WeWork simply as office space, it's a bit like thinking of the portion of the iceberg that you see above the water. And what's really going on there is much, much more robust, and we're going to talk through that a little bit. So that's us, working to make it easier to do what you love, or as we say in French, vivre ta passion, and that's how we do it. The culture is very important, and so I'll just put our values there on the screen, but the way that I always like to tell people my first really overwhelming impression of the WeWork culture, probably besides the first time that I sat with our founder and CEO, who's a real visionary and just an incredible just has such an amazing gift for sort of communicating this mission and getting you excited about it. When I was first, my first week at WeWork, I was in New York, which is where our headquarters is, and I was training, and I went into a building. One of our largest buildings generates, I don't know, something north of $10 million US a year, and the woman who was running that building was 22 years old. Now, she had ownership over how to drive the sales. She had ownership over the OpEx decisions. She had the ability to, hire and, make recommendations on staff and that kind of thing. She was 22 years old. In other words, we really don't have any preconceptions about who can or can't do what. And that's essential to understanding the culture. This idea that this is a place for people who have a really strong aligned values, and here they are. And for those people then to sort of get in the mindset of trying to say yes when asked to take something on, jumping in with both feet, being comfortable falling down, picking themselves up quickly, using the team. The two values that I really think are interesting together is this idea of tenacious and together. Because so often in life we think of tenacious as this cutthroat thing. We're going to cut everybody else down. And in WeWork we've created a culture where tenacious and together go together and reinforce each other. And if I zoom out on that, it's this other thing that I would like you to understand about the business, which is so often in life, we think of our values and our mission as separate from the profit motive. And often in companies and in the world, we think, oh yeah, that's nice, these values, but we have to make money. And what we've really learned and gotten very good at WeWork is how those two things feed each other, how they're two sides of the same coin. So when we make the business stronger, we advance the mission more. And when we drive the mission more, we attract more people to the business. And that's essential when you think about what recommendations to make at the end of this competition. I will also tell you, in addition, in regards to the culture, we take it beyond the workplace, and we, for instance, fly every employee from around the world, which is about 1,700 people, to the Adirondacks in upstate New York in the summer, and we have a summer camp, like Wet Hot American Summer meets, business. And that's a really interesting thing. And I want to talk about it not just because it's humorous, but because it speaks to our beliefs around culture, which is when you take people and you put them out in the woods and you put some inspirational speakers, but also artists and different experiences around that, you create cohesion in that team in a different way. And the cost that we bear to produce that summer camp every year, which is a sort of remarkably unconventional thing to do, we just see that returning over and over in terms of talent attraction, retention, how we create bonds between an employee in Montreal and an employee in New York and an employee in London so that ideas get shared and flow and things bubble up and we accelerate our own velocity and all that kind of stuff. So the culture is very, very important. A word about my role. So as Valerie mentioned, I'm responsible for the business sort of top to bottom in a region that extends from Washington, D.C., on the southern end, up to Montreal on the northern end, and then as far west as Chicago on the eastern side, Boston. So there's several cities there. Today that's about, if you think of our revenue unit as a desk, we're about 22,000 desks, about 21 buildings, and about 155 employees or thereabouts. So that's the sort of span of what I'm responsible for. I want to quickly speak to what is WeWork and just give you a little visual of the space and also some sense of kind of what that culture feels like. And a video is going to be the best way to do that. So let's hope that this plays well.
Business is creating really an ecosystem that allows people to pursue their life's work and do it in a better way, in a more efficient way, and a more successful way.
We are holding on to a new idea as a culture in believing in what you do and not just working because it's a job, but working because you have passion and joy in your work.
I had really big dreams for myself and for my business when we moved to New York that I never would have imagined seeing myself and my company on a billboard in Times Square.
I think that's what drives me the most. It's not money, it's not status, it's just building something that I'm proud of that can, it sounds really cheesy, but change people's lives.
The feeling that you have right now of being together, the feeling of being happy, that's what WeWork is.
So hopefully that gives you a little sense of, kind of what we're talking about. But at the same time, that's all maybe a bit ethereal, maybe a bit abstract. And so let me now kind of bring this down to more tangible, more concrete description of the business for a few slides. In the simplest sense, what we sell today, what our product offering is today, is workspace, community, and services for a global network of creators. Creators is our word that encompasses entrepreneurs, freelancers, artists, this idea of being the founder of your own life, small business decision makers, but also units of larger businesses, as we're going to talk about. So workspace, community, and services are the kind of tangible offerings today. Now, what that looks like in terms of how you can buy them, what packages those things come in, today there are basically 4. So there's a We membership, which is sort of a virtual membership, or think of it as an a la carte membership, where you can pay $45 a month. These are US dollars. Apologies. $45 a month, and you can have 1 day of workspace in our buildings. And then you also have full access to the network. You have the WeWork member-only app so that you can connect with people and collaborate. And then you can book workspace as you need it on an a la carte basis for the rest of the month. So for example, somebody who maybe lives in the suburbs, is an accountant, is only in the center city once or twice a month, doesn't need an office every day, but when he or she is in the center city, needs a beautiful place to meet clients and sort of punch above their weight as a small business person, they're often a We member, okay? A hot desk is the sort of lower price point for people who want to be there every day. And what that is just what many people think of as co-working. So it's open space desks. You have 24/7 access. You sit down wherever you like. You pop open your laptop. You jump on the Wi-Fi. You work. You just don't have any permanence. But you do have a place every day, all day if you want it. And then we have dedicated desks, which is, again, an open space environment, but it's your desk. You leave your monitor, you have a file cabinet with a lock, so still that open space kind of collaborative environment, but a little more permanence and a little bit of a higher price point. Also 24/7 access, et cetera. And then we have private offices like what you saw in the video, and the private offices range from a single desk to, north of 100 desks. And those vary from market to market, but at Place Ville-Marie here in Montreal, you're talking about something like $600 Canadian per person, like per desk per month is the cost. These are month-to-month commitments in most cases. So that's the basic sort of how it's packaged and how you can purchase. In terms of where we are, we now have 112 locations worldwide. We started 2016, just to give you a sense of the velocity of the business. Don't quote me exactly on these numbers, but they're pretty much accurate. We started 2015 with, I think, 14 buildings, and we ended with 42. So we started 2016 then with 42 buildings, and we ended with 112. So that's a pretty interesting rate of growth. In terms of desk count and member count, it's roughly the same, 2.5x, 3x, that kind of thing. This year we opened Shanghai, we opened Hong Kong, we opened South Korea, we opened, I think we have a team here from Australia, we opened Melbourne, Australia. We're getting ready to go to India. We opened Mexico City this year. We're getting ready to go to some other cities in Latin America. And so it's very exciting. At the same time, we've been growing, really, really substantially in North America. So for my region, I started the year in January of 2016 with 6 buildings and about 5,000 desks in 3 cities. And today, like I said, I have 22,000 desks in 20 buildings in 5 cities. So that's the sort of curve that we're on. The interesting thing about having buildings everywhere, and this is a really unique differentiator for us, is that if you're a member in Montreal and you are in New York and you need a place to work, you have your WeWork card and you go right on the app and you book a space and you go in, and this key card brings you right in. So you have access to global infrastructure for anything that you need it for, and that's, for many people, a really huge proposition. The mobile app is really important, and I want to just give you a conceptual way of thinking about this because it's not just a mobile app for the sake of having a mobile app. We talk about community all the time. We talk about this as a platform for creators, as a platform that you plug into and you become part of a community. And that's not just a values idea of the importance of community. It is that, but it's also more. It's really the realization that community will help you grow your business faster in material ways. And so how do we create that sense of community? There's really 3 layers, is the way that I think about it. First, it begins with space. It's how we design the space. And we design all of our spaces around shared pantries. And all the shared pantries, unless there's some regulatory issues in that city or country why we can't do this, they'll have unlimited craft coffee. They'll have unlimited filtered fruit water. And they'll have locally sourced beer on tap. So those spaces create this first layer of where people bump into each other, start to connect, start to share their networks and their knowledge. I always tell people on tours, depending on what kind of day your business is going to have, we're going to keep you hydrated or caffeinated or maybe now and then intoxicated. And that sort of basic energy in the community comes, first from the space. The next place that it comes from, because these are just buildings, the next place that it comes from is how we staff and activate the space. So we hire for a really specific profile of almost a hospitality profile. People who really care and want to help and have a focus on giving the members an incredible welcome, an incredible warmth, an incredible energy and sort of animation to the space, helping them connect, helping them solve problems, helping them find solutions, helping them, in a very active sense, grow their business faster. And then the third layer is the digital piece. And the digital piece, you won't be able to see this, but I like to do it live because it's unfakeable. In the digital piece, first, there's all members all over the world are connected, and you can see what they're looking for. So right now, this person is looking for a photographer for a shoot in their office. This person is looking for a native English copywriter. This person is looking for a startup lawyer recommendation. There's always somebody looking for an iPhone charger. It's really interesting, and I relate to this, having been an entrepreneur, and many of you might. The nature of being an entrepreneur or a small business person is that you're always trying to solve problems. I need an SEO consultant. I have to hire a new PHP developer. I need to figure out the taxes, whatever that is. And so if we can take your time to identify and find and get those people working and solve those problems and compress that time, by definition, we're helping you grow the business faster. We're freeing up your headspace to focus on other things. And that's really kind of the simplest way to think about how community, how a platform materially grows your business faster and isn't just sort of a nice thing that, people say, okay? So this idea of space, people, digital, that's sort of the recipe at a high level. Now, I want to show you examples when we think about community and services. You can see on the left, these are just the day I was putting this deck together, I took screenshots of kind of what people were looking for on the left. In the middle, you can see an example of whatever building I was in that day, what events were coming up in that city. I guess I was in Montreal at the time. And then on the far right, you can see examples of services. So depending on the country, we have members who buy their health insurance through WeWork. We have people who run e-commerce sites and get cheaper rates on their credit card transaction fees because they make a deal through WeWork. We have folks who are getting small business loan financing, you name it, the lists of services that businesses need, because the interesting thing about our community is it's heterogeneous. It's not all tech companies. It's not all marketing agencies. It's not all insurance companies. It's quite varied. It is interesting, as an aside, how in certain cities it takes on the composition of that city, or even in certain sections of cities. So if you're in New York and you're in our building in the meatpacking district, there's a lot of fashion entrepreneurs. And if you're up in Midtown, the composition of who's in that building will be a little bit different. But even having said that, the community is heterogeneous. You will see this great variety from kind of services, companies like insurance and professional services or whatever, to some app developers or, people who help with imports or whatever that may be. So that's a little glimpse at this idea of community and services. And I just want to bring this back to the voice of the customer, the voice of the member, and kind of sum up this little section, and then we'll dive into the next piece.
Hi, I'm Allison McGuire, and I am the CEO and founder of Walk. And this is our office space at WeWork Fulton Center. I went into many co-working spaces, and there's something inspirational about WeWork that I couldn't find anywhere else. I found for the first time when I walked into this space, this incredible feeling and this incredible energy, and people are really excited to be here when they're here. Hey, Leah! Leah's community manager. And this is my office. Ding! Absolutely the best investment that I've ever made for a number of reasons. WeWork helped me grow by giving me the unique opportunity to turn to somebody who's working here or here and who's dealing with the same problems that I am. This is Bespoke Search Group. They helped find our latest employee. This is our PR team. We actually met them through WeWork. Okay, here's the kitchen, free water, free beer. There's also free coffee all day, every day. The greatest part about the kitchen is the community feel. So you'll be heating up your food and you can make conversation or meet a new member. I haven't met you, I'm Allison. Everybody's dealing with the same things. That's been the most incredible part of working with WeWork. That is a community of collaborators and creators that are building something. I would 100% not be at the place I am with Walk if I wasn't working out of WeWork. WeWork is the best investment that I've made in the company, and I'm so happy to be here.
I love the line where she says, everybody's dealing with the same things. Because that's really what you find. We're all dealing with the same things. I want to just talk about this idea of personas. And the way I would encourage you to take notes on this is just think about a matrix. So I've given you sort of, say, the vertical axis of what the personas are, like the types of companies the types of kind of groups or companies. So we have a heavy concentration of millennials across company types. We have a good chunk of kind of what I would think of as like startups or creative companies, meaning companies that are focused on a piece of intellectual property and sort of exploiting that. We have services businesses, so small marketing agencies, insurance, that kind of thing. We have what I call more polished professionals, people who wear a blazer to work, and they're a little more kind of accountants and lawyers and that sort of thing. And then we have enterprise clients, and I'm going to open up this enterprise section for you quite a bit. Now, the interesting thing is that people tend to think of WeWork, if you are lightly aware of the company, you tend to think of it as, right, that's where all these startups are. And that's true, they're there. But again, the composition of the community is much more varied than that, and that's part of the strength of the business and kind of important to understand. Now, I told you, think about it as a matrix, so that's kind of one axis. The other axis might be the professional persona of the person in the company who is the decision maker. So oftentimes that is, in a bigger company, a head of real estate or a head of asset management or something like that. In a smaller company, it might be the CEO or the COO or the CFO who's making this from a sort of dollars and cents decision. One of the most interesting sort of buyer personas that we see all the time, and really more and more, is the head of HR. Is somebody who is lying awake at night, stressing out about their goals to attract and retain millennials, creatives, and engineers. And they understand that coming and being part of the WeWork community is going to give them a leg up on that. Generally, that happens first because often those companies are in the suburbs, and so WeWork offers them a very, very easy way to get into the center city, on a turnkey basis, just plug in, and now they can start to offer that as perks for certain employees that may want to work downtown rather than, out in the burbs. But also it happens from the point of view of all that I just shared with you in terms of the community and that environment. These people that they're trying to attract want to come to work in this environment, want to be part of that community and that sense of purpose and so forth. So a little way to think about personas, okay? Now, this is not advancing. Does anyone else have control of the slides? You guys have a printed deck in front of you, right? So I'm going to keep going and talk through the next one, and when these folks catch up, that'll be all fine. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So enterprise. I'll just illustrate this really quickly with an example of one of our buildings in Boston. 1,900 desks. If you take a pure average of, how many companies are there, it will average out to something like 5 people per company, if you just took a pure average. But in reality, there's a lot of 1- and 2-person companies, and then in that building, you have GE, IBM, Silicon Valley Bank has their New England headquarters. They probably have 80 people there. Liberty Mutual. This is sort of the range of companies. Now, why are they coming? Thank you. They're coming because, again, they can forego the cost. So in addition to the reasons that I described of plugging into the culture, advancing their hiring goals, et cetera, the complex decision at a high level in big companies of how many square feet we need, how many people we will have to house in this city at this moment in time where the cycles of change in the economy are accelerating, it's very, very difficult to know, am I planning for 100 heads in Montreal or 250 or 50? And time again, companies bear the cost of getting that decision wrong, where they underplanned and now they need to augment their lease, maybe move, all of that is very costly, or they overplanned and it's highly inefficient because they have all this extra space that somebody now needs to sublet, or they just eat the cost. So coming to WeWork and being able to plug into this in a single price, not have these long-term commitments, navigate kind of the moment, it's very, very compelling. Not unlike kind of the best comparison that I can give you is when we as an economy went from on-premise servers to cloud-based servers. All those advantages of, I no longer have to tie up all this capital. I no longer have to enter an agreement that's going to reduce my agility at a time when flexibility translates to competitive advantage. I no longer have to, make those decisions with imperfect information. Now I can shift to a provider who's executing at a very high level of quality all over the world and just pay for what I use. That's pretty compelling. And that's what's happening in terms of the enterprise business. We built a fairly, muscular least cost calculator where we can kind of, take companies' assumptions in terms of where they want to be and what their headcount is and a whole bunch of other things and factor in, and it's going to run through their insurance costs and their furniture costs and all this kind of stuff. And, this varies a little from company to company, but at a high level, what you see is this. And this is very, very surprising for people. In the bigger companies, interestingly enough, it's not so surprising because they're really the ones who are the most sophisticated about their physical assets and the true cost per employee. It's the smaller and mid-sized companies that are still stuck in this paradigm of thinking about space on the basis of this abstract thing that has no inherent value in your balance sheet called a square foot. We're sort of shifting people to think about it on a cost per employee, and when we do that, this is kind of how it plays out. In terms of assets, because one of the things you're being asked to think about is what recommendations would you make for how we should extend the product line? And so the assets that we have to work with are a piece of that. And Valerie, I just want to check, we have another 5 minutes? 10? Okay, thank you. And so we have physical locations on 5 continents. We have very robust proprietary in-house, what we call the We OS, the We operating system that we've built for how we, it extends everything from how we kind of, review deals to designing space, to reconfiguring space for enterprise clients, all the way through, utilization and billing and so forth. So that is a great competitive advantage for us, the building information systems intelligence that we have and the software that we've built on top of that. We have, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere around 120, architects, designers, decorators, that whole sort of creative space utilization skill set is a deep owned proficiency for us. We have a brand that has, while it's still a young brand in its life and there's still lots and lots of upside for kind of awareness and understanding, we feel very strongly that it has great resonance, especially with millennials and what we think of as the we generation. That's, an idea of values, systems that get associated with millennials but really are not unique to millennials. This idea of wanting to have a sense of purpose, et cetera. And then we have a member community today that is coming up on 100,000 people worldwide and will grow to 1 million members within the next 5 years. So as you think about, gosh, here's a company with this mission and these values, what else should they do? Be thinking about these assets that can be put to work. We think a lot about, the idea of the simplicity on the other side of complexity as a place that we want to be. And this is a little rubric that I think kind of falls into that, which is how do we think about products? And it's very, very simple. If you look at WeWork from the outside, you think WeWork is this office space community services offering. And our view is that's actually a product, and that's the product that is in the scale stage. And it's doing really, really well, and there's, lots still to do there. We also have this notion of a beta or launch stage, and WeLive is an example of a product for us there. Now, WeLive takes the same sort of idea of WeWork, which is that people want community and that people can actually live in cities and work in cities in a different way. And that, by the way, that's going to have to happen because the stat that we talk about sometimes is that by 2035, 60% of the world's population will live in cities. Well, if that happens, we're going to have to think about space and how we use space, both at work and at home, very, very differently. And this essential idea that people actually don't need or even really want that much private space if you can give them a smaller private space in the context of really abundant, beautiful shared space and services and rich, rich community. That's a trade-off that people, at least in our world, are rushing to. And so WeLive is a little bit of those ideas put to work in a residential offering. And then, we have other ideas, and you folks hopefully are going to add some of kind of what we might incubate and play with and experiment with and think about kind of as extensions of this. So, again, the question for you really is, given our mission, our culture, our assets, our strategic advantages, in what ways should we look to extend the product offering? Specifically in the context of what I said before, that we do not believe the mission and the values are separate from the business, the commercial engine, the profit motive. The raison d'etre is the mission. And so what we do needs to drive the mission. And the mission is to have a world where people don't just work to make a living, but a place where people work to make a life. And we're making that easier. In terms of deliverables, we're asking that you prepare slides that outline your product ideas and prioritize them according to a few criteria. The extent to which it advances the mission, the size of the opportunity, how it draws on assets and competitive advantages, and also it's interesting to think about it from a strategic point of view. And my example there is maybe there's a product that doesn't ring bells on the market size opportunity, but it means that when we go into a new city, we kind of acquire that market faster. Something like that would be an example of a strategic value that we want to speak to. I'm going to leave you with a short clip from Miguel McKelvey, who is one of our co-founders and our chief creative officer and another really special, visionary, just sort of wonderful human being. And this one is on YouTube, so I think it needs to be played from the back. Sorry, Miguel. YouTube. Huh. While we're waiting for that to play, I'll point out, oh, here we go.
Highly developed, highly considered, complex tool sets to empower that growth.
This is kind of a basic question, and I have a feeling I'm going to know the answer, but is WeWork, when you describe it to people, do you describe it as a real estate company or a tech company?
Well, I think if we had to describe it,
talk to my mom back in Atlanta and tell her, is WeWork a real, because I think she would say, oh, it's a real estate company.
Right. I mean, we would like to be a company that's thought of as a company building communities, because again, it's about the people. Like, the real estate is only a functional requirement for the connection to happen, right? Like, you got to have the place to stand. But at the same time, what really matters to us is the fact that people are connecting in that space and then realizing value from it. So, and again, the technology is the same. Like, the technology enables that, but it's all about the human interaction. So, in the big picture, a lot of the logistics and the physical space and all that stuff sort of disappears, and it's really the chance and the opportunity amongst us to connect and to be like, our value, our opportunities are increased by having meaningful connections. So if we're any kind of company, if we could describe it, it would be like a company that's empowering people to sort of follow their own life's plan and become really successful at it.
You guys just raised over something like over $400
So I'll just talk and we can wind that down. Two things I'll point out. Miguel has the Detroit WeWork shirt on. We don't make a new shirt for every market, although we did for Montreal and we did for Detroit. And Detroit is an interesting one for us because Detroit is at a moment in its life as a city that I think we all sort of understand. And so the opportunity for us from a mission point of view to come in and help to reshape Detroit and strengthen Detroit as a place where people make a life and not just, sort of work out a living, that feels like a profound opportunity. And I can tell you the level of excitement within the company from Miguel and Adam, our CEO, and everybody about Detroit is way disproportionate to the actual kind of, size of the commercial opportunity that's present for us in Detroit. So I share that as an illustration of what we've been talking about. I will wrap up with this thought, which is you all know the term opportunity cost, right? It's sort of, economics 101. And what I would point out to you as you think about your recommendations in this case competition is that the notion of opportunity cost is much, much greater when your growth is like this. If you're at a moment in your life where you're growing, not quite as steeply, the trade-offs of putting $1 here versus there are not as enormous. But if you're at the moment in the company life that we're in, where you're growing like this, opportunity cost is a driver of how we think about what products we should extend into, also what markets we should extend into, what cities we should open in, et cetera, et cetera. Because the cost of putting the dollars in the wrong place, there might be a good business there, but man, there might be a great business over here. And so that's my way of encouraging you. Never mind think outside the box, just get rid of the box, okay? The judges are going to be asked to judge in part on the size and scale of the idea that you're proposing. And I want to make sure that people don't think of this as, right, there's a nice, safe, incremental kind of path from here to there that will yield, compound annual growth of 7.2%. Throw it out. Let's have fun. You promised. You promised. All right, so hopefully you feel that, this is an idea that just the conversation itself is a bit out of the box, that it's not kind of neatly, contained, that the idea of how you take values and mission and all this stuff that really makes our heart beat, and how you put that with a business engine that really, really pumps, and, that's an exciting thing. It's why we're jumping out of bed every morning. I can tell you it's not an easy gig, but it's a lot of fun. It's exhilarating. I hope you all have business experiences in your life, half as exciting and rewarding as this one, and I hope that the next however many hours we're going to spend together is something that you find really exhilarating and fun, and just encourage you to be creative and think big. Thank you very much. So Gwyneth is going to come, and we're going to collectively have a chat. My only problem with that is I have like adrenaline and I don't want to hold the mic. Yeah. Is that all right? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We now have Gwyneth, who will be narrating the Q&A. We have 55 minutes, so we'll be drawing schools at random and going around with the mic. So please raise your hand so we can locate you as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Hello. First school. The first school is University of Toronto, Rotman School of Management.
Hello. Hi, I'm Leisha from the University of Toronto. So my question is about your member screening process. Would you ever turn down a member for WeWork or WeLive?
Theoretically, yes. It doesn't happen much because we are kind of believers in the human spirit and so on. And our general belief is that, what we have to do is be very definite about defining the culture that one is going to find and experience at WeWork, and that tends to self-sort, the market. The people who don't fit that culture don't really want to be there. Now, the economic proposition, the cost proposition is strong too. So sometimes somebody who doesn't really fit that culture says, yeah, this is just, plain handy for my business and I need it. And for the most part, those people are non-disruptive. Every now and then somebody is disruptive, is at odds with our value system. And we address that as respectfully, but also as directly as possible. It's very rare. It's really, I'm told that there's a sign on the wall at Ford. I think this is a Peter Drucker quote of "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." People have heard this, yeah. And that idea, culture eats strategy for breakfast, is why we don't have to deal with that question that much, because we're so definite about the culture that it self-selects for the most part.
Nanyang Business School, Singapore. Maybe if you could stand up when you hear your school name called.
You touched on it a little bit. I just wanted to know how WeLive is doing. You didn't, like how many members it has now, what you're kind of projecting the growth.
It's just one question that you can have? I'm sorry, but you have one question.
Okay.
So what was the one question?
How WeLive is doing.
We Live's doing well. The first couple, we created with a set of beliefs in terms of design and operating principles and so on, and there's been a lot of opportunity to kind of tweak those and experiment with those. The learning has been really, really rapid, but the We Live in New York is, I think, 100% full, and the We Live, the other one is right outside of Washington, D.C. in Crystal City, and I don't remember the exact number there, but, I'm going to say it's over 3/4 full. I don't remember exactly where we are on that. So one of the interesting things about these first two buildings was the opportunity to try the concept in two very different environments and sort of, learn a different set of takeaways as we did that. But we're 100% bullish about We Live, and the feedback from the members is amazing. What you heard from Allison, who presented herself in the video as the chief badass for the company walk, the interesting thing about that is, yes, that's a marketing video, but I guarantee you we could all walk out of here and walk over to Place Ville Marie, and we could find 5 members in 5 minutes who would share the same perspective and experience. The same would be true if we went into a We Live.
Smurfit Graduate Business School, Ireland.
It's a great question, and I don't have a really neat way to package it for you, and I would just offer you a few ways to think about the competitive landscape, which is I gave you some examples of the heterogeneity of the community, who our users, if you like, are, and so the competitive landscape is going to look a bit different depending on which user kind of persona you focus on. So the short answer is it's not a simple answer. There's multiple competitive analyses that need to be sort of thought through depending on which segment of the business you want to talk about and grow. At one end, the competition is Starbucks. At the other end, it's a traditional lease or, some other provider of short-term space. The players in each of those, sections kind of vary, and they vary from place to place and state to state and country to country. But at a high level, that's how I would think about it.
Heinrich Heine, University Düsseldorf, Germany.
Thank you for the presentation. How do you tackle...
Did you have fun?
Yeah, of course. How do you tackle cultural differences in each country? Let's say, for example, European persons are not that open-minded as Americans are. So how do you tackle that from your product perspective?
Sure. The question is, how do you attack cultural differences from a product and sort of market penetration point of view? Montreal is actually a great example of that. So we opened our building in Place Ville Marie March 1st. We took, trying to remember the exact amount of square feet, something like 80,000 square feet. Everybody in Montreal said, you're insane. There's no way a co-working space could ever kind of fill, even 20% of that. We took floors 3 and 4 in one of the Place Ville Marie buildings. Now, you have to appreciate here, Place Ville Marie was the tallest building in Canada at one point, but, with great respect, I think had come to be thought of as a bit of a conventional sort of yesterday's location, as opposed to being out in the plateau or someplace that's more, or Old Montreal, something that's more associated with kind of startups and innovation and energy. So there was a lot of skepticism about that. We took the space, we opened it on, we opened the first of the floors on March 1st with 600 desks. So again, if you take a rough average of, 4 or 5, you're talking about something like 150 companies. That's a lot to go out and find. And we filled that 100% full as of September. Oh, no, as of August. So there's the success. We then opened the next floor with another 600 desks, and we're now at about 1,000 members out of the 1,200 desks. So pretty compelling. We just opened a new building right across from the Bell Center for hockey fans with another 1,000 desks. So that's the scale of what we're doing here in a city that has a very specific culture. We certainly are not perfect. not by a long stretch. And one of the things that I think is so powerful about this company and this culture is a willingness to run hard even when we don't have it exactly right, but also to carry ourselves with a level of humility that's necessary to sort of learn and refine and iterate. And Montreal, Quebec has very specific language requirements. There was an internal conversation in the company about what we needed to do to meet those language requirements. And then, you know, some of us kind of came in and said, hey guys, this is not about the letter of the law of the language requirements. This is about introducing a business that feels part of Montreal, that feels of Montreal. And that's going to be critical to getting the rate of growth that we look for. So I offer you the evidence of the growth rate here as evidence that we understood the local piece and how to make it work and feel really authentically of Montreal and not, you know, some New York company just kind of dropping in. Now, part of that is in the design and sort of the superficial layer of the design and how we build it out. Part of it is in the location selection. Part of it, by the way, is the fact that we came into Canada and Montreal before Toronto. But the biggest part of that probably is in how we staff. And who we hire and sort of give the business over to. And we give, you know, these team members substantial voice and autonomy to really tell us, you know more about Montreal. I, as the leader for the region, spend a good amount of time here and try to get smart, but I'm only ever going to get so smart about it. And so we really look to kind of the people who are local on the ground, and that's true whether that's Europe or Hong Kong or wherever. And then the next thing that happens, and this is where the magic really kicks in and where you get sort of a tipping point, is the members do it. The members do it. So when you get the local companies that are connectors in their own, you know, circles, and they come and they start to set up at WeWork, and their friends come in for meetings, and their clients come in, and then, you know, it starts to really feel like the building that we opened in Berlin is early in this process, or you know, what we have in Amsterdam or in London, or, you know, pick a location. It really tips when the members start to fill in.
McMaster University, the Groot School of Business, Canada.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Are you having fun?
I'm having a lot of fun.
Good.
My name is Brianna. I'm representing the DeGroote School of Business, and our team was wondering, within each WeWork location, what proportion of WeWork members do you see signing up for the different plan offerings?
That's a great question, and I need to point out that the inventory varies from building to building. So again, if we just use the Montreal example, I don't know off the top of my head, but at Place Ville-Marie, which is the first building, there would have been a larger number of single desk and two desk options, whereas in L'Avenue, the building that just opened last month, I think there's a grand total of 4 or 5 single desk offices. So people could still get hot desks, but if you were a single, you know, sole proprietor who wants to be able to shut a door and have a lock and so on, there's not a lot of that inventory for you at that building. So the short answer is you're going to see the composition breakdown be quite different from building to building, partly because of sort of who's doing business in that part of town, partly because of how we build out the space. And why we build the space differently has to do with some things we've learned about the sequence of what types of space you need as you get further into the market. And, you know, it also has to do with the economics of a given deal, because different size spaces monetize differently, and so, you know, we think all that through as well. So it's very hard for me to give you an answer that I'd be comfortable with, kind of because of those things, but I would say that, you know, the majority of our space, like the significant majority of our space, are private offices.
University of Chile School of Economics.
I'm sorry to cut you off, which is really interesting because, again, oftentimes the sort of knee-jerk perception of WeWork and of co-working is that it's all open space, kind of, you know, row tables with cords hanging from the ceiling and that kind of thing, and really that's a minor, like substantially minor percentage of what we offer. Thanks.
University of Chile.
Are you having fun?
Thank you for your presentation. Our question is regarding the profitability of your products. If you have a breakdown that you can share us, or either by product or by regional, by region.
I wish I could, but the answer is no. Sorry.
University.
But I mean, I will say, so that I'm not just being a total brick wall, the product margins on WeWork are much more sort of defined at this point because we just have many, many more data points than we do on WeLive.
But are they even for other products?
Sorry, it's just one question. Sorry. University of Cape Town Graduate Business School of Business, South Africa.
Hello, and thanks for introducing us to WeWork.
I'm waiting for somebody to say before I ask the question. Okay, good, thank you.
So our team was wondering, which one of your 5 customer categories is currently your highest revenue generator?
Well, I guess I'll sort of take the question in terms of like which one has the highest margins or which one sort of is the most absolute dollars, flowing from. And in terms of margins, I think, look, the margins get bigger on bigger companies. And the reason that's true is because, again, just from a construction point of view, there's fewer costs to build out the larger offices, but also it tends to be that the length of stay for the bigger companies is stickier because moving a 2-person company to a competitor for a $100 discount is fairly easy, but moving 30, 40, 100 people is not. And so as we look at the sort of evolving answer to your question of where the greatest revenue margins come from, it's definitely the bigger companies, which could mislead people to think that they're more important than the small companies, and it's just not true. The composition of the community is really dependent, again, on that sort of mix, and it would be wrong to generalize here because you tend to sort of reinforce stereotypes, and I don't want to do that because what we see in this community and in this business is that oftentimes those stereotypes can't be trusted. But having said that, it's probably true that the smaller companies, are the ones who are catalyzing connections and conversations at a little bit of a higher rate, and so they have that value in our business. Because, look, this is a platform business like, I always think like Etsy or eBay or something, which is to say the people on the platform create the value on the platform. And so, how we think about this from a pure dollars revenue might answer the question one way, but how we think about the, nonlinear kind of growth in the value of the platform would kind of lead you a bit of a different way.
University of Arizona, Eller College of Management, United States.
Say it.
I have this one too, don't you worry.
Awesome. Now the competition becomes to say who can say it louder each time. Woo! And in your native language. Let's do that too. Okay.
Woo! Thank you for that inspiring presentation. My team is really passionate about this. You're incubating a number of innovative startups. What is the company's attitude towards potentially acquiring one of these companies within one of your WeWork spaces, as opposed to inorganic growth?
As opposed to, sorry?
Sorry, as opposed to organic growth.
Oh yeah, we're totally open to that.
Good to know.
Hey, by the way, we often look at. We don't want to do everything, and we don't believe that's the right way to grow the business. And so, in some cases, there's one case already where we acquired a company called Case, which was a really profound business information systems company run by some architects who were just data geniuses. And the leader of that company is now our chief product officer. So we worked with that company for a while first, and then, that there was a point where that made sense we weren't going to grow that capability on our own. And of course, we had already, by working together, learned a lot about the alignment of our values and their understanding of the mission and all those things that, we judged to be essential for the acquisition to be successful over time. So the same would apply to companies that are in our space as members.
Lund University School of Economics and Management, Sweden.
We hope you're having fun. So our question is, how long do our customers stay in one of your office buildings?
It's a good question, and I don't have current enough data that I feel I can really answer it in a way that you can hold me to. So I would say, for the purposes of the competition, assume 12 months as an average length of stay.
Wilfrid Laurier University, Lazaratus School of Business and Economics, Canada.
So our whole table is having fun, right? Yes, yeah.
Amazing. The first joint statement of fun.
Yeah, of course.
Love it.
Well, we community, right? Makes sense. Our question is short and sweet. Does We Live, as a separate product offering, does it operate on its own application, or does it interact with WeWork at all?
The digital application?
Yeah.
It's separate.
Okay, thanks.
And it's really interesting, by the way, because, We Live has this concept of neighborhoods, which is that every three floors comprises a neighborhood. And the way that you get this neighborhood sense is that you have internal stairwells. So there's open internal stairwells like you might have in your house. And the common spaces on the different floors sort of complement each other. So you might have, like if I think about the Crystal City we live, on floor 9 there's a laundry room with video games, and on floor 8 there's a beautiful screening room, where people are watching, like, whether it's the Super Bowl or Game of Thrones or whatever, they're coming together doing that. And then on floor 7, there's this gorgeous chef's kitchen. And what happens in the app is, you're sitting in your unit on the 3rd floor, and you get what we call a buzz that says, hey, I'm making spaghetti and meatballs on 7. If anyone wants to join. And so the proposition of, the way I like to think about We Live is, almost every apartment building you've ever been in or condo building is designed around the principle that you're going to go in and you're going to go up to your unit and you're going to shut the door. And We Live is kind of this principle that you're going to go in, and if you need to shut the door, you can, but you've sort of self-selected to be in a place where you're likely to come out and join the spaghetti and meatballs potluck as well. And the app is a really key feature because of how you're trying to do that across floor plates.
FIA Business School, Brazil.
Brazil, Portuguese fun. See? Can we get in your own language?
Hi.
In your own language, can you tell us whether or not you're having fun?
Estamos nos divertindo bastante.
Yes.
We hope you're having as much fun as we are as Brazilians in the snow.
Thank you.
Because right now it's very hot in Brazil. So in terms of your benefits program, how do you select your business partnerships?
Great question. We have a lean mindset about this, which is somebody comes to us and says, Dave, we're offering this service that does X, Y, Z. We really think it would be compelling for your members. What I say to them is, well, let's just validate that. And, if it is going to be a value add for members, we want it to happen. And if that means that this person gets to grow his or her business, faster, fantastic, especially if they're a member, which is sometimes the case. And so especially when they're a member, we're that much more sort of eager to help them test and validate. Sometimes the testing and validating starts with a little in-person thing in one of our spaces where we can just get a little live feedback. And then that allows us to go to the digital team and say, hey, look, I know you have a lot in your queue, but, please make it a priority to add this company to the services, roster in the app, and from there either, people use it or they don't. We don't promise people that we're going to promote that service or anything like that, so it's really up to them from there. We do have a couple of those that we're more active partners in, and like the health insurance one in the U.S. is an example of that. But we don't, we're not too precious about the decision. We don't kind of believe we know, because again, the nature of having a heterogeneous sort of customer base is that, what I, as a 45-year-old ex-software entrepreneur, thinks is valuable might not be right for a 23-year-old, services company or something like that. So we want to just get things into the rotation and see what sticks.
HEC Montreal, Canada.
Oh, nice.
Yes, we are having fun.
Excellent.
So obviously WeWork has many strengths, but what are the greatest weaknesses and challenges that you think that WeWork is facing right now and into the long term?
That's a great question.
Do you want to kind of specify whether it's weaknesses or challenges?
What would you say is your greatest weakness?
I was hoping for challenges. I think that we really do have a mindset that it's just like we have this sort of corporate embodiment of this learning mindset. And so what today maybe we feel is a weakness, we see as something that we're going to build on. So I'll just sort of say that context. I think that our view is that there's a paradigm shift happening in how people think about space, like the analogy that I gave you earlier around cloud computing. And there was a moment, if for those of us who can go back 5 or 6 or 7 years, there was a moment where sort of every business, publication had a story about the cloud, and that was this sort of tipping point. I always say the story. I started a company 2 companies ago in 2010, and it was a payments company, and I was going to put the servers in the cloud, and I was talking to one of the investors, and he was like, "Dave, that's kind of dicey." And that was 2010. It's only 7 years ago, That was a startup, like you couldn't, So anyway, we started that company, we sold that company, I started another company. Now, if I were going out and starting a company today, and you were an investor, and I came to you and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to put all my servers on premise," there's no way you would write me a check. There's no way you would think I'm a complete laggard, and you wouldn't do it. And you'd be right. And so it's really interesting, right, that in just 7 years, the mindset has done a complete 180-degree turn from the cloud is for chancers to, the on-premise installation is for laggards. Well, we think that's what's happening with, the long-term lease. And that's sort of what is happening, our business tells us. And so when that shift is happening that fast, you have to have the conviction to make decisions based on that belief with what is probably not as much data as you might like. Now, the more buildings we open, the more countries we open in the more cities, the more data points we're capturing, and the more confident we are kind of in our learning and so forth. But I would say that a challenge, for us along the way has been being sufficiently data-driven when the data just isn't available yet. That's not so much a feature of our DNA or a weakness on our part, but more a feature of being in a category that's just really emerging. And actually, I would kind of spin the question the other way and say that one of our strengths has been the ability to sort of connect those dots in a forward-looking way and tell the story at scale, and then sort of, show the beginning of the curve that validates that, such that we could achieve a cost of capital that gives us a huge, huge competitive advantage, relative to anybody else that might try to do the same thing. Right on.
Xiamen University School of Management,
fun,
China.
Where are you from?
From China.
China, excellent. So can you say whether or not you're having fun in your language?
非常有趣.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay. So thanks for your presentation. And our team just wondering, last year you opened your WeWork in Shanghai. So what's the performance in Shanghai?
I'll be honest, the scale of what's on my plate generally prevents me from seeing across an ocean and a continent to know exactly what the inner workings of the business are there. So I couldn't in any sense answer about the performance there, other than to say, you know, we feel super, super bullish about what's happening there. The product itself is really beautiful. There's lots of pictures online and so forth. The feedback from the members that are, you know, the kind of early adopters is really positive. It feels like, for me, when we opened Montreal or some of the other cities that I've been involved in opening, you know, you start to recognize the features of the adoption curve. And as far as I can tell from, again, my distance from that kind of subset of the business, the features of the adoption curve feel like they do elsewhere. So that's a very positive thing.
Porto Business School, Portugal.
Do us a favor and vary this, right, so it doesn't get too boring. What is the most fun thing so far that's making you have fun?
I went a little crazy on the karaoke last night, which is why I sound
What song?
There were some rap songs. There was a few.
What one?
I don't know, anybody who was singing with me. I can't really remember right now.
Okay. Well, there's a networking thing later. We'll find out. Thank you for your honesty.
Thank you for that. That was wonderful. So our question is, given your steep growth projections going forward, do you anticipate any threats to the culture, given that it's such an important aspect of the company?
I think the culture is a delicate, you know, on the one hand, it's an incredible competitive advantage because it's very hard to replicate. And again, in our view, it really is the source of so much of the value and so much of the rate of customer acquisition, that infectious sort of spreading of the narrative. On the other hand, culture is, you know, a tricky thing, and it just, look, there are, if you like, there are small t threats every day. What we have to do is really, really lock onto these values that sort of frame the culture like in a complete North Star kind of way. And, you know, thankfully we have leadership that really sort of walks that walk and does that. So I think I don't want to give you a Pollyanna answer because it is a delicate thing. And it is a living, breathing thing. And it's not something that we completely, control. That's the nature of culture. On the other hand, we do think that we understand the right sort of catalysts for it and also the right ways to kind of protect it. Like the woman who asked me earlier about whether or not you ever have to terminate a member agreement because somebody's out of sync with the culture. I mean, I can think of a few examples over the last year where that happened, and there was when I, in my executive conversations said we made a decision to let this member, to move them out in XYZ city. I never once got any pushback from above that said, "What are you, crazy? You're sending customers away?" Everybody understands that relationship. So I don't have a neat answer, but I think it's a great question, and it's one that we're sort of fascinated, and I would really say obsessed by, to be honest. Thanks.
Thank you.
University of Munster, School of Business and Economics, Germany.
Did you sing karaoke?
No, but wir haben viel Spaß. It was the German version.
Excellent.
Our question is that we wanted to know, based on which criteria do you choose the locations of We Live and We Work?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Do you mean how do we choose whether this should be a We Work or a We Live, or do you just mean how do we choose any of them?
Actually, any of them.
Okay.
If there are differences.
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of what cities we go into, we have an understanding of what feels like a cultural fit. We certainly look at the economy and the trends of the economy. We certainly look at the cost structure of the real estate deals. So we have a bunch of kind of points of analysis like that. In terms of if we take that down a level further to the specific deal, should we do, 30,000 feet there or 50,000 feet over there? A lot of that becomes about the things that drive any real estate deal, accessibility, cost, et cetera, with probably one, big difference, which is we have a very specific approach to design that doesn't work in certain kind of buildings. Certain size floor plates or things like that. And also, we're gonna increase the density of the building. And so there are engineering diligence factors like, means of egress and stuff that need to be thought through very, very carefully, or else the permits will just never happen. So if we go, kind of city, there's a decision of like, this is a city where we believe we can build a business of a certain size, and therefore the cost of entering that city is going to, pay off in a sufficient way. And that's driven, partly by our qualitative understanding of the city and the culture, but also by looking at some fairly straightforward data points about the economy and accessibility and cost and so forth. And then it gets more and more granular as you get down to the building and the subset of the building, et cetera.
Queensland University of Technology, Graduate School of Business, Australia.
What city is that in? Queensland?
That's, g'day mate. We're going off over here. That's actually shrimp on the barbie, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful.
That would be how you say it in my native tongue. Is we're having fun.
That's great.
Thank you. Just in terms of your product life cycle, in terms of your incubate phase, is there anything that you have currently going or anything that's failed in the past for you?
We do, but I don't want to influence your thinking.
Feel free to.
No, I really think I'll be putting a finger on the scale. So I appreciate the question, but I'll hold back. Because one thing that can happen here is we might have tried X, but you might come and say, you should try X with a twist, and I don't want to inhibit sort of the surfacing of that idea, Because, again, we don't presume that we have the smartest take on X or Y or any of the letters in the alphabet.
University of Calgary, Haskayne School of Business, Canada.
Yes! My man!
Are you having fun? That's not my question, but are you having fun?
I am having an amazing time.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. Our question is, when you enter a new market or you're in an existing market, how do you get the word out about WeWork? How do you attract members to your service? Thank you.
Super question, and as you'd imagine, there's been a lot of sort of experimentation on different ways to do it, and that's ongoing. I think that what's interesting is we don't really do conventional advertising. Like, I don't think, with the exception of that one billboard that you saw in the video that was on the side of our own construction project, you're pretty much never going to see an out-of-home ad for WeWork. We do some Facebook and some sort of light social advertising, but for the most part, we drive our funnel off of events. We build these beautiful spaces. We hire these amazing teams with this terrific sort of warmth and energy to run them. We start to populate them with, really interesting companies. And then we just go to people and say, are you the organizer of your school's alumni organization and you're looking for a place to meet? You're welcome to use our space for free. And what happens is people start to bring, folks who are hosting meetups and different Q&As and panels, but also like, a yoga instructor or somebody who's teaching kickboxing or whatever. So there's a mixture of kind of business content and then sort of lifestyle and wellness kind of stuff, and also a happy hour or two, maybe a little karaoke. And we just want to start to kind of have people experience the space. I'll say to the judges, it's my sincere hope that every one of you is going to come by for a happy hour or a yoga class, or maybe that one of you will come and host a Q&A, because that's where people experience the space. This whole notion of being a community company, a company that sells community, there's really no way to articulate that such that anybody really gets it. And what happens inevitably every day in every city is somebody walks into a WeWork and goes, oh, You know, like oh, I thought I knew what this was. Oh, this is a little different. And that's a lot about feeling and energy, and that's where people kind of get it and where they get more excited. So for the most part, we try to drive this off of events, because even if the event is not in our own building, our people, we hire very carefully, and so our people really genuinely carry the brand, you know, sort of themselves, and that creates an authentic sort of understanding of WeWork at one level. And if we can start to have spaces that add value in your business and in your pursuit of whatever your kind of dream is, the journey you're on, and do that in our spaces where you can feel the energy of the space and the community, that's kind of the home run for us.
University of Ottawa Telfer School of Management, Canada.
Thank you for the presentation and the excellent teaching of the Q&A session. It's phenomenal. And here at Telfer, we're having a blast.
Right
Fantastic.
on. I knew that about you guys.
So our question is, with regards to the enterprise expansion that you propose, how do you mitigate the risk? Because you speak about month-to-month leases and agreements, and with large customers, let's say 1,000 desks, 1,200 desks, what happens on the eventual break of a lease? And how do you mitigate that risk?
Sure.
I think that was a few questions. Do you want to just summarize that into one question?
Yeah, so risk mitigation for
Question
enterprise.
mark.
Yes.
Question mark. You know, look, the short answer is very simple. The default term is a month. But typically big companies want to come in and secure a level of certainty, and they want to get the best price they can get. So they'll come in and say, I need to be here for a year. I need to be here for 2 years, whatever. And so one of the other reasons to go to the question we had about revenue and what subset produces the most revenue, which I answered in the sense of revenue margins, one of the other reasons that that enterprise kind of subset is valuable is because they tend to have low churn. And, you know, there's a couple of use cases for the enterprise customer. One is a swing space where they're building out their own space, and that tends to have a pretty kind of clearly defined, you know, length. And the other is what I described earlier of we're navigating a moment, or we're building a team in a market, we're not sure how it's going to be, but they, you know, are planners and they commit to a length of time in general. It's very rare, it does happen, but it's very rare that a company comes in, you know, with any significant number, like I'll make it up and say north of 30 or 40 people, and keeps that on a month-to-month basis. And we're happy to, you know, work with them a little bit on cost, because we can do the math that basically backs out the churn assumption and you know, give that back to them in a price reduction, so that for us, you know, we tend to come out well in those scenarios, and at the same time, there's something in it for them. Thank you.
Memorial University of Newfoundland, Canada.
Oh, I'm dying to go to Newfoundland.
Hi, our whole team is from Newfoundland, so I figure I'd say we're having a deadly old time.
Right on.
So,
good on you, bye.
So our question is, I think one of the other teams here talked about sort of your criteria and how you get started in setting up a new location for WeWork, for instance. What's your average time? I know it'll vary from, you know, from location to location. What's sort of an average time from when you identify that you want to open a new location to when it's essentially doors open, having your grand opening ceremony?
Location meaning a specific building, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. You know, there's so much that's encompassed in there, because it depends on the negotiations with the landlord and all that kind of stuff. So I'll leave all that out, because that's impossible for me to answer, and just say from the time that a lease gets signed until we open, you know, what's that time look like? And that's, it varies a little bit, but, you know, obviously the size of the footprint, it has to do with how fast we're going to move through design and construction and so forth. But we have a method of moving on parallel tracks, so that the day the lease is signed, we already know what we're going to do in that space and so on. And we're already well positioned for the permitting process, et cetera. It's sort of 3 to 6 months. 6 would be very long. You know, 3 would be really efficient. But it's that kind of a time range. In some cases, we might get in 10 weeks, but that's sort of the range. So generally, we the lease structure allows us that window of time. And because, again, we have the benefit of doing this, many, many times in many, many contexts, we have greater and greater predictability in terms of our ability to do it, and that allows us to be more precise in terms of what we need in the lease. And all that just kind of, you're just sort of triangulating that much better. So I'd love to talk to you guys later, because my wife's family is from Newfoundland, and I really would love to hear more about it.
University of Alberta, Alberta School of Business, Canada.
Yes, I'm having fun. Are we having fun? Yes, we're having fun. Thank you.
Doesn't seem like it. That wasn't sincere. Come on.
It's been a very long week.
Try again.
You should,
Come on.
should really be here.
Who wants him to try again?
Yeah, we're having fun.
All right.
There you go. One thing that we were wondering about, you gave us the cost structure for WeWork and the difference between normal leases. What does that look like for WeLive? Are you at a premium, or are you still cheaper than others?
I don't know. I don't have data that's clear enough for me to be able to answer that precisely. So I will just say that the intent is that it's a similar proposition. In other words, that on a cost basis, WeLive is a little more compelling than the alternative, but it requires that people are sort of looking at the whole package and comparing in an apples-to-apples sense. So, so the idea is always we want to meet people at a price point that makes sense for their, for kind of like what things cost. But at the same time, we just want to deliver much, much more value in that price point. And so if you try to say, well, I can get an office of X square feet for this price, and the office that you're giving me at WeWork is, fewer square feet, and therefore it should be this price, our response will be, well, here are all the other things you're getting with it, including 10,000 square feet of shared space that you're not getting in your other office, and kind of reframing. If you have that conversation on the WeLive side, then, you may come and say, I can have a 900 square foot, 2-bedroom apartment for this much money, and the WeLive unit that you're presenting to me is this size, and this many, people can sleep in it, and, this many beds, and therefore I think it should be this, and we're going to say, fair enough, let us show you how we think about it in terms of what else is going to be included here, and then you be the judge, of whether that's a compelling value proposition. So conceptually the same idea. What the actual numbers are, I can't speak to.
We have a bit less than 10 minutes to go in quite a few schools, so we're going to try and do everybody, but I doubt we'll get to everyone. Bear with me on the next school. Instituto Tecnológico y de Estudios Superiores de Monterrey, Business School, Mexico.
Le estamos pasando padrísimo.
Bueno. Oh,
Right here.
there's somebody over there always talking. Anyway, I heard you. I'm glad you're having fun.
Thanks. Our question is, can you expand a little bit on what are some of the main competencies, main ideas you have successfully transferred from WeWork to WeLive?
Oh, boy. Well, I think, we could sort of take that question as broadly or as specifically as you like. Again, at a broad level, remember this sort of construct of how you create and catalyze and nurture community, that idea of sort of space and people and the digital layer, that certainly is at work for WeLive. Again, I think even just the sort of, how that product aligns to the mission and the values, that's completely, what's the word, consistent. In terms of the physical product, I think there's a lot of learning around how people use space and where you can sort of tilt that to encourage people to connect rather than to sort of go in the opposite direction. One of the examples that I like, Miguel McKelvey, who you saw the video clip, who is an architect and is our chief creative officer and was very involved in We Live, shared with me this example. One day we were walking around the We Live in Crystal City, and he said, it was really important to us that we have no dead-end hallways. So when a member is sitting in her unit and maybe has a little shyness or whatever and is thinking, I'd like to go join the other members to watch Game of Thrones, but I'm not sure, what if I get up there and I don't know anyone, or that kind of subtle thing that happens for us. It's important that the member can come into the screening room where the other members are, and if he or she doesn't see the friends who make them feel comfortable, but only sees other members maybe they don't know so well, that they don't have to turn around and walk back out. That they can just kind of continue through like, hey guys, and walk through and not have that be this moment of social awkwardness in the community. Well, that's like quite a subtle idea, but there's lots of little things that are baked into the way the space is built and designed that we learned in some cases on WeWork and we applied on We Live. So the question's a wonderful question, and one that we could talk about for a long time. It can be taken on so many layers, because there's also things that we've learned on WeWork about how we source materials. How we, which fabrics are durable and hold up well, at this level of usage and all that kind of stuff. So the list goes on and on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, this might be our last school. University of Rochester, Simon Graduate School of Business, US.
You guys obviously don't need a mic.
I guess not. Well, hello, bonjour, namaste.
Bonjour.
We represent 4 countries right here. Thank you for the presentation. Question that we have is, a lot of time for workplaces, there are a lot of regulatory and environmental compliance issues. How do you ensure that your building, and in a sense, the occupants, comply to those regulations?
It's a great question. So the question is, there are a lot of regulatory factors, and they vary from city to city and country to country, and how do you sort of allow for that? And I would say the answer is, for the most part, pretty simple, which is we are able to understand them at a almost zero capital cost. In other words, we don't put any money to work until we've already sort of come to understand the regulatory issues of a certain city or province or whatever, and we've made that decision sort of with a full kind of business awareness. And so I can't think of an example of a city or a country where we chose not to go for that reason, but it probably affects our prioritization of sort of the sequence in which we go to these different places. And I also think that there are some countries where maybe it's a small country, and so the size of the business means that, or the size of the market means that you're only ever going to build a business of a certain size, and then it becomes a question of, do we want to take on those regulatory sort of obligations and another team of lawyers or whatever it may mean internally from a staff point of view, given that the entire sort of opportunity is only this. So we think about that all the time, but we think about it in a very low capital cost context, which is fortunate.
Université Laval, Canada.
Donc oui, on a vraiment du plaisir. On est très inspirés par la présentation que vous nous avez faite.
Formidable.
Did you understand? So I think we want to know, how much are you willing to invest today for that strategy we're going to deploy for you? Yeah, thanks.
You want to know how much are we willing to invest for the product extension that you propose?
Yes.
Yeah, my answer is going to be, talk to me about the sort of cost relative to the return rather than the cost. We've done a good job of raising capital, and we have a very strong business model in terms of revenues. I mentioned we're going to hit $1 billion run rate this year. So, it's hard to think of a proposition that you're going to make that we couldn't fund if we wanted to. The real question is going to be, what is the opportunity relative to that cost? And I want to encourage you to think bigger, not smaller on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. University of Kaiserslautern, Germany. Last question.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My colleagues already said that we had a lot of fun in German, so I just go on with my question. How do you ensure that there's this community feeling and that there's a variety in your members, so not only polished professionals?
Sure. The community feeling has to be created in the first place by the staff. So how we hire, so again, how we design is important, but how we hire is where you really, really start to introduce that energy. They no matter how beautifully built and selected they are just buildings. And so the team has to come in and sort of bring that joy and that enthusiasm and that curiosity and animate them and kind of create that. And in terms of the variety within the member group, that varies from place to place, and we don't actually say we have to have a certain percentage of this and a certain percentage of that. But what happens, because we are a growth-focused company and really a company that's very good at driving growth, is that when we start to, sort of reach out to the market, we reach out in multiple verticals and through multiple kind of partners and channels, and that tends to yield a variety in terms of kind of who's in the building at the end of the day. So guys, I thought this was really fun. I hope you did. Thank you very much for humoring me and being part of it. I'm really excited to see the ideas, and we'll see you later at the networking piece. Cheers.
Thank you, Dave, for being here today. That was extremely engaging and fun. So before I pass it on to Amanda to explain the logistics of the afternoon, I would just like to note that Dave will be in the Pathfinder room from 4 to 5:30 to have a meet and greet with all the teams. Thank you.
All right, so now I'm going to describe the process moving forward. I'd like you all to listen very carefully because it's a little tricky and a little complex, and we want it to be the smoothest year yet. So first, after I'm finished speaking, we'd like to invite the judges, coaches, and spectators to leave the room and proceed up the escalator and off the convention floor. We're asking that you do this as quickly as possible because we're waiting for you to leave the convention floor to send the teams to their preparation rooms, and we want to start preparation on time. Next, we're going to be bringing in the team hosts who will find their designated team and sit with them at the table. Provided the floor is clear of coaches, we'll be asking teams from Wave 1 to go directly to their preparation room. There'll be no waiting outside. They'll enter the preparation room immediately and wait for the signal to start preparation. Wave 2 will remain in this room for 55 minutes with their team hosts sitting at the table. We request that you only speak in English so that the team hosts can monitor that no preparation for Wave 2 begins prior to the allotted time. We'll be giving bathroom breaks to Wave 1 when they leave the room and they enter their preparation room. Wave 2, we ask you to sit tight until we've got Wave 1 in their rooms, at which point you'll have that opportunity. So without further ado, I ask the judges and coaches to please leave the room as quickly as possible. Thank you. All right, we're moving. Could you please get everyone to encourage the coaches and judges to leave the convention floor as quickly as possible? Team hosts should be standing by. Right. schools, I'd like you to please help the team hosts find your table. They'll be holding their signs as usual. If you see your school, gesture, call to them, get them to come over. All right, team hosts, you can walk on through